It's September's TBR. I don't know what to do about that. We're about to enter September. For me, September is always kind of a weird in-between month. It doesn't quite know what it wants to be. I return to work. I'm a teacher, and so I've had a summer off. I go back to work. Everything's new, but also the same. The weather is fall, but also summer. The mornings are cold and the afternoons are hot. Everything is chaos. Everything is exciting. Everything is exhausting. What kind of books will keep me reading through the chaos? I have to pick books based on really solid storytelling. So let's just dive right in. The first book that I'm gonna talk about is Shanghai Girls by Lisa C. This was recommended to me by a friend who is currently living in China. This is about two sisters, May and Pearl. They evacuate, I think, out of war-torn Shanghai, I think, into arranged marriages, I think, that take them to the States. I think. I'm not very certain about the plot of this one. As you know, if you've been around for a while, I generally don't say much about the books that I am going to read or that are on my TBR because I try not to read too much into them. But to be honest, before a book came onto this TBR, I wanted to make sure that the story was something that was really going to draw me in. And so I did read synopses of all these books. That's what I remember of the synopses for Shanghai Girls. Again, I didn't pick this one, a friend picked it, but I read Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. earlier this year and really loved it. High hopes for Shanghai Girls. Next book on the list is my book of the month choice. So that was Vampires of El Norte. This takes place 1840s Mexico on the Texas-Mexico border, and there's gonna be like a battle between humans and vampires. This is, of course, by the author of The Hacienda, which I read last year and really enjoyed. Took me a while to get into, but once I was in, I was in. I think that I will enjoy this one even more now that I'm more familiar with the author's writing style and I know what to expect. I think going into The Hacienda, I didn't quite understand just how supernatural her writing would be, and now I do, and I'm a fan. So that's exciting. My Shakespeare group is reading Hamlet, which is one of my favorite Shakespeare stories, so that's good, that's on track. And then I have a couple of audiobooks. Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. Never read anything by Jonathan Franzen. I know he's super popular. I know he's super well known. I don't know if he's super loved, actually, but here we have him on my list right now. This is a family saga set during the 1970s in Illinois. And I know that because it's a family saga and from the synopsis, I know that there is going to be a lot of conflict in this book. I know there's going to be a lot of drama in this book. For some reason, I mean, it's not generally the kind of story that I am drawn to, but for some reason, I'm feeling in the mood for it. I think the dad is a pastor. I think the daughter is going to want to become a communist or a socialist or something. I think things are just going to, I think society is going to be mirrored in this family, and I think it will be interesting to read it. I hope that it's written in a way that I love it. It is the first in a series, and I know that this series is referred to as the Key to All Mythology series, which is of course a nod to Casaubon from Middlemarch. How difficult it was to gather all the information to figure out the key to all mythologies. So this is like, I think, a series that's going to focus on our American, our uniquely United States mythologies and try to unravel them through looking at and find connections and things and through looking at one family and what they go through, I think. I think. We'll see. It sounds interesting to me and yeah, it's not necessarily the kind of thing I would normally pick up, but for some reason I'm craving it. So we're gonna go with it. The next one is Fellowship Point by Alice Elliott Dark. This is another author I don't know at all. In fact, this may be a debut. I'm not sure about that. Sorry if it's not. But this is the story of two women. One is a children's author, Agnes, and the other is a woman who chose marriage and children, and her name is Polly, and these two women, I believe, are friends, and it's about their relationship and how their lifestyle choices impact who they are as people and how they treat each other and the expectations they have of each other. And I think that this spans an 80-year friendship. I am intrigued on many levels by this particular story and how it's gonna, I think, again, mirror United States history between, by using these two women. And so I don't know, I'm craving that. And that's what I'm going to do. It also says, like the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, they say things like magnificent storytelling, superb storytelling, and that's my buzzword for this month is storytelling. So I'm going to pick this one up, and I think it's not going to disappoint. Then I have Wide Acre by Philip Gregory. What I understand of this one is that it is the equivalent of Gone with the Wind, but set in the Georgian period. A, I love the Georgian period, and B, I am really drawn to that kind of main character, that Scarlett O'Hara kind of character. It was there for me in Forever Amber, which I really loved, which was basically Catherine Windsor reading Gone with the Wind and going, you know what, I can do better. And creating this story about a Scarlett O'Hara type character, but set in the English Civil War. This one is a self-centered Scarlett O'Hara character trying to protect her property, set in the Georgian period in England, and I'm there for it. I already know I love Philippa Gregory's writing. I already know I love the setting. I already know that I will probably love the main character. It is probably going to be one of my favorite reads of the year. I've never read it. It's the first in a trilogy, I think. Series. I think the series is a trilogy. And I am hoping to love them all. Then I have one of my favorite recent storytellers, but something different from her for me. I picked up another Mary Stuart, but I picked up her first book in her Arthurian cycle. So this, or saga. So this is The Crystal Cave, and this, I think, is going to tell the story of Merlin. Then one of the books that I picked up at the library book sale was Mistress of My Fate. What a beautiful cover. This is by Hallie Rubinold, and I actually haven't read. I know she's quite famous and quite a well-loved author, but I actually haven't read anything by her. This one is about Henrietta Lightfoot. She thought that she was going to lead a quiet life as a lady's companion to her spoiled cousin, Lady Catherine. However, fate had something else in mind. And so this is the first in a series as well. I'm starting a lot of things for myself to finish, not this year. But this is the first in a series as well, and I am really excited to pick this one up. I think that based on my reading of the first paragraph, this is going to be a pretty fast, voracious, engulfing, embracing read for me. So I'm excited about that. Another book that I am going to listen to is The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield. This one is about Marie Antoinette and one of her sisters, and there's an element of magical realism, I think, to it. I think that they can embroider spells into things. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but it is about Marie Antoinette, full stop. That's all I need to know. I love books about Marie Antoinette. The Embroidered Book. TBR Veteran by an author I know I love. This is a book I've tried to read multiple times and just haven't picked it up. That is Circe by Madeline Miller. I love Madeline Miller's writing. I've only ever read one thing by Madeline Miller, but I saw her interviewed, and she was here for our local library stuff. That was during COVID. We watched it on Zoom, but she was here. And I saw her talk about, you know, what she's working on in the future, and just I get really excited by everything that she thinks about, doesn't follow through with. I know I'm gonna love Circe. It just, for some reason, hasn't been the right time, and I've had it on my shelf for a very long time. So I'm excited to finally pick that up. I don't think I need to tell you what it's about. Another TBR veteran. I've tried to read this one so many times as well. That is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. I've started this multiple times and then just not lost interest, but been distracted by other things. And so I am going to give it a real go this time and actually read The Historian. This is about a father and a daughter, and like, this is what I remember from what I've read at the beginning of the book over and over again. There's a father and a daughter. They've gone to a place, I think maybe Turkey, I'm not sure. And they, the father, I think, is either involved in a mystery or researching a mystery that has to do, of course, with vampires. If that doesn't say vampire right there on the cover, I don't know what does. And I think it's about Vlad, the Impaler, as opposed to Dracula. But I could be wrong about all of that. I really don't know. I do know that I do enjoy this author's writing, and I do know that I have been drawn to this book over and over and over again, and I know that I have started it and I have not continued on with it every single time, probably 4 times. So now's the time. Now is the time. Another book I picked up from my library book sale, which I'm very excited about, is Rumer Godin's In This House of Bread. This book has been loved. It's been very loved. But I think that I will love it too. I'm very excited about this one. I've never read a Rumer Godin. I have seen the more recent, I think 2021 adaptation of Black Narcissus, which was also about nuns. So I think she writes about nuns. I'm sure she writes about other things, but in my mind, Rumer Godin is that nun writer. So I am excited about this one. This is about a woman in a nunnery, and I am told that that's more exciting and interesting than it sounds. I believe that I'm going to absolutely adore Rumer Godin and want to read everything that she's written, and I believe that I am going to absolutely adore In This House of Bread. I have another author that I've really enjoyed reading recently. I picked this book up with a gift card at Half Price Books. This is the last of 4 books I picked up during that shopping trip this past year. And this is My Theodosia by Anya Seton. And Anya Seton, every book I've read by her has something that hasn't aged well. I'm just ready for that now. But her writing is just the kind of writing that I love. I love these women authors writing these kind of historical fiction, mystery-ish love story books in the 40s and 50s. I love that author voice. I love the vibe from that time and those women. And so I am sure that I am going to absolutely adore My Theodosia, which is about Burr, his daughter, Aaron Burr's daughter, who she is, how she grows up, how she disappears at sea and is never found. Series I'm going to continue this month. Reading the next book in the Austen Family Chronicles. This is A Ring of Endless Light. This is one of the more famous books from that series, better known books from that series, even has a Disney movie that it was turned into, which is not so great. It's not good. I mean, it's not good. My Freudian slip. It's not bad, but it's not as good as the book, obviously. This one, whereas The Young Unicorns last month focused less on Vicky, this one turns back to Vicky, but also introduces some new characters and is really talking about ESP, between humans and dolphins. It's really interesting, really fun read, and I'm thoroughly enjoying rereading all of the Austen Family Chronicles books. If you've never read them before, I highly recommend them, even if you're an adult. They're so, so good. pick up the second book in MMK's memoir trilogy. This is Golden Afternoon, and I don't know where we're going to get to. The first book, I'm still in the middle of it. I will finish it before September, but it's focusing a lot on her father. What an interesting life he led. What a fascinating set of characters and experiences went into making MMK. And so I love her voice. It's a slower read. There's no audio for it. You just kind of sink into it. I was reading about a chapter a day just to get into the rhythm of her writing. It's very much like a talker, like you're sitting across from a friend who's a talker and who follows all her rabbit trails. But you are enthralled and you are enchanted because what she's saying feels like it has no point, but she gets there. She gets there. So you kind of have to get into the rhythm of her writing. And once you're there, it feels very comforting and inviting, and I can read it a lot more quickly now than I could at the beginning. When I first started, I was loving it, but it was more strenuous reading than I had anticipated. And now I can read it at a pretty good pace. So I'm going to continue on with that. And then I'm going to pick up the second book in M.V. Hughes' like growing up in London memoir type thing. This is a London girl of the 1880s. The first book ends so abruptly with a death, and it was just like, whoa. And I almost just went straight into this one because I needed a little bit more resolution than that. But I didn't. I refrained. So I'm going to pick this one up. This is the second in a trilogy. The first one talked about her childhood in the 1870s. This one's going to talk about her teenage, early adult years in the 1880s. And I am looking forward to reading that. There's such great little details, like song titles and book titles and the names of products and slang and just so many great little very minute details that make reading those particular books so engaging, enthralling, and just amusing because they're giving you, it feels like they're giving you like the reality that you can't get from history books. So I'm really enjoying my time with that, even if she did leave me on a huge, like, emotional cliffhanger. And I'm gonna pick up the next book in the Wildwood series. This is Under Wildwood, the first book. Whoo! I loved it so very, 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 very much. These books are delightful magic. They are just intensely delightful magic. They have all of these like illustrations throughout, but they also have full color illustrations throughout. These are like books should be. The language is, it's a middle grade story, but the language is elevated. The words are real. It's just, it assumes that the reader is knowledgeable and capable of figuring out what a word means. It is, the sentence structure is complex. The story itself speaks to the heart of childhood, and it is a daunting story. It does not shy away from hard things that we trigger warning everyone about all the time now, and so our kids have no resilience. So, but it's at an age appropriate level. It's something that kids can understand. So there is war, and there is fear, and there is loss, and there is disappointment, and there is isolation, and there is friendship, and there is betrayal, and there is misplaced trust. There's all of these things that are a real part of real life in this highly fictionalized world, which is actually Portland, Oregon. That's the other layer about it that I really love, is that it takes a place that is near and dear to my own heart and completely reshapes it, and yet retains its utter familiarity. It's such a great series. It's such a great series. I had read about a third, I think, of the first book previously and just wasn't in the right space for it. And then this past month, I read the first book all the way through, and I kept thinking, this is what books should be. This is what books should be. I am also going to pick up a reread of a new series. So I've read this series before, but I haven't started reading it this year again. I always knew that I was going to reread it. There are 4 books in the series. Even though it's very Christmas oriented, I'm starting with the first book now so that I'm reading the last book in December of this year. And that is Ellen Hildebrand's The Winter Street series. I first encountered this in the winter of 2019 and never looked back. I do not enjoy any other Ellen Hildebrand books, apparently. I've tried several and I don't like them, but I love this series for whatever reason. It is not, again, it is not the kind of thing that I would normally like. It's very angsty, it's very drama, it's very soap opera-y, but for some reason, I love this series. And so I am going to revisit this family and take this trip again. Yeah, I am very excited to start this series again. I have a couple of nonfictions that I would also like to get to that aren't part of series. The first one of those is Stacy Schiff's Cleopatra. I've read Stacy Schiff's The Witches and really enjoyed that look into Salem witch trials time. I'm interested in Cleopatra all of a sudden. I am just very curious about her story and what we know about her, what we can figure out, and I trust Stacy Schiff to not make too much up, like to not try and fill in those holes that will be there. So looking forward to that. And then ever since I read Love in a Cold Climate earlier this year with the Kindred Spirits book club, I have been wanting to dive deeper into the Mitfords. So I have the sisters, the saga of the Mitford family. This is a heavy book. I am really looking forward to reading this. This is going to tell me all about the Midford Sisters. They have fascinated me for a long time, but only really from afar. I've watched a documentary here and there. I've read Love in a Cold Climate and, oh, The Pursuit of Love. We didn't read Love in a Cold Climate. I've read Love in a Cold Climate and I've read The Pursuit of Love, which is what we read earlier this year. So ever since I read those 2 books, I've known about the Midford Sisters. And I know that one of them becomes a Nazi supporter fascist. One of them goes the incredible opposite direction and becomes a revolutionary socialist. One of them moves to America. Oh, that might be the same one. They all go in such different directions and they all come from the same place. And they have such a unique and strange childhood. They make up their own language and they're just very isolated. They grow up with no money yet in this like aristocracy class. And it's just a fascinating little glimpse into these women, but also British history and social strata. You know, each of these 6 girls in some way had their foot in some influential part of history. So they fascinate me and I'm going to do a deeper dive into their story. I also have a few audiobooks that I'm going to listen to. I've got Returning Light by Robert L. Harris. 30 years of life on Skellig Island. I'm probably saying Skellig wrong. I can't remember where I heard about this book, but it sounded fascinating to me when I did hear about it. It says, on Skellig Michael, thousands of birds, that's the name of the island, thousands of birds appear and disappear, erecting towers, coming together in wings of movement, which build and unravel over the empty sea. Often no one else is there to stand beside me on the island. The mind wanders. Links with the past are easily made. Ancient ways of viewing things come alive. In 1987, Robert Harris happened upon an unusual job advert in the Carryman. A new warden service was being set up on Skellig Michael, and deadline was imminent. Just weeks later, he was on his way to set up camp in one of Ireland's most remote locations, unaware that he would be making that same journey every May for the next 30 years. Here he transports us to the otherworldly island, a place that is teeming with natural life, including curious puffins that like to visit his hut. From the precipice, he has observed a coastline that is relatively unchanged for the last 1,000 years, a beacon of equilibrium in an ever-changing world. But the island can be fierce too. Inhabited only for 5 months of the year, solitude can quickly become isolation as bad weather rolls in to create a veil between Skellig Michael and the rest of the world, when the dizzying terrain can become a very real threat to life. Return to Light is an extraordinary memoir about the profound effect a place can have on us and how a remote location can bring with it a great sense of belonging. Yes, please. Yes. Again, I don't remember how I heard about that, but maybe it was on a podcast or something. But I put it on hold and it finally came in, so onto the TBR it went. And then in July, I watched and loved Rainn Wilson's The Geography of Bliss. It's a wonderful little documentary series, not very many episodes of it, but really, really impactful and eye-opening as he travels from place to place. And he just kind of like talks to people and tries to find out what is bliss like, and it was really, really great. And he just like visits places and tries to figure out what's the secret to happiness here, what's keeping people from being happy, what's making people happy, is there a difference between joy and happiness, all those things. And so he's got a book out about wanting a spiritual revolution. That's all I know about it. And it's called Soul Boom. And I am interested to read what he has to say. Now, of course, Rainn Wilson is quote unquote just an actor. He's not like, I don't know, one of the greatest thinkers of our time, maybe. He's Dwight Schrute, right? From The Office. He's, just a human being, but he's asking questions that all human beings ask, and he has the means and the connections to explore those things. And I'm curious to see what he's going to say. A lot of what I saw him say and experience and do and be changed by, at least for a moment, in The Geography of Bliss, were things that I myself have experienced through travel. And he was experiencing it through travel as well. I think that there's something so important about getting out of your space and getting into other people's space and getting out of your ways and allowing other people's ways to show you perspective. And also to see that the basics of being a human are the same everywhere, no matter where you go or who you're talking to, whether they look like you or not, whether they act like you or not, whether they sound like you or not, the basics of being a human are all the same. And I experienced that myself through travel. And if you have read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books, if you think this is the worst TBR ever made, go ahead and leave a comment, and let's have a little discussion. I am gonna go read. Yeah, that's it. I don't have anything else to say. Let's just go read. Let's go read.